everybody. Welcome to this November issue of Staffing Monthly. And I am really, really grateful and excited to have this guest here with me today. And it's actually been a couple months in the making, and it's worth the wait. You will be blown away based on the knowledge and experience that this person shares. And they're actually bringing 30 plus years of industry experience and adult education and training experience, combining it together. And she focuses in two very key areas that all staffing agencies tend to struggle with. The first one is shortening the ramp to get your producers up to production. And the second one is taking those tenured recruiters and increasing their production capacity by enhancing their skills or optimizing their techniques and through training. And she is one of the most renowned trainers in the industry. And it is my distinct pleasure to welcome you, Amy Munroe, from Staffing eTrainer to Staffing Monthly. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, Dan, you are so welcome. I'm excited to be here and honored. I appreciate you inviting me. I look forward to our discussion.
As do I. I can tell you just from the earlier conversation, I know that everyone that's watching this is going to be in for a treat. So here's the challenge that our industry has seemingly faced. You work with a lot of different staffing organizations throughout the country, so I'm sure you see this, which is why you're here. But filling positions, filling job orders, and it feels like fill percentages have gone down. And my fear is that this becomes the new normal, and I don't want it to be. Like, I want us to get back to filling higher percentage of orders with better quality candidates. So how do agencies do that? If you're a recruiter and you've got all these orders, how do you fill more of them with better quality people? What are you teaching your clients to do?
You know, it really comes down to a pretty simple thing. And it's how you treat the candidate and the focus you place on the candidate. So you mentioned, Dan, that I do work with a lot of staffing companies. And I go into staffing companies and I will shadow their recruiters, right? And I will look at what they're doing and assess how they're doing. And truly what I find is relationships are not being built. And individuals are talking more about a job than they're talking about the candidate. And to me, it's all about the candidate. And if I'm talking to a candidate, that's what I need to be focusing on. If I'm new in the industry, this is a whole nother conversation in itself. The general market does not see staffing as the sophisticated industry that we are. And so when people come into staffing initially, they may not understand the level of the ball field they're playing on. And we have a tendency to just use this interview checklist. And as a recruiter, that's what I'm doing. I'm reading off the questions off this interview checklist, making sure I'm asking all the questions I'm supposed to. And what ends up happening is, you may see this, Dan, recruiters flip on autopilot.
Yeah.
You know, and they are so used to asking those same questions, they just do it over and over and over and over. And to me, when I see change in the number of fills, the reduction in turnover of the temporary associates, it's directly related to the quality of relationship you built with the candidate from the very first conversation.
That's tricky because it is true. It's very, very simple. And I think you hit it on the head when you said that we go on autopilot. Because a lot of staffing agencies are working on a lot of recs and we're dealing with a lot of candidates. So I think it's a natural tendency to just kind of go through the motions and go on autopilot. But something that you just said in there that I really gravitated towards is you see the recruiter talking all about the job and not enough about the candidate. And I could almost see why that could be a turnoff to the candidate, especially some of the newer generations that are coming through. But And I want you to respond to that. But what I think is interesting is what if the pandemic wasn't solely responsible for crushing the fill rates? What if it's only masking it and we're just using it as an excuse and we're not realizing that this autopilot mode that we're on, because we're all a little burnt out right now, is actually contributing to that lower fill percentage? We could actually fix that part of it. Right? Am I right? Like, is that happening?
And you just make a great point, Dan. And I think that this has been happening in the industry for as long as I've been training in the industry. And I won't say how long, but I think you did. It's been a long time. So it's something that we can change, and it absolutely can have an impact because your candidates, they feel it. If you call them and you're saying, hey, do you have this skill? What do you think about this type of job? Do you want to work in this area? Is this how much you want to be paid? It's now all about you trying to fill an order than it is about, hey, Dan, Mr. Candidate, talk to me. What is it that you're wanting? What are you looking for? How can we help you find your next big career step?
That it makes a ton of sense. And obviously the reason I say it's so simple but yet complicated is we all know that. Like there's mounds of data out there that shows that candidate retention is better, fills are faster, quality metrics of performance reviews are better when there's a stronger relationship, because the basis of a strong relationship is connectivity, and inherently the better connected you are to a candidate gives you the better insight of placing the right one. So how do we do that? How do we bridge that gap? How do we get off of autopilot and make sure that we're always focused on building the relationship? How do you teach that or build that into the process?
Well, first of all, it's making them aware of it, right? So you've already gone step one. You now are aware that you have a tendency to flip on autopilot. So the next step is don't ask the same questions. Change up the questions you're asking of your candidates and make them different, right? So maybe instead of saying, what did you like most about your last position or the position you're in now? Why don't you say something like, what's the best thing that's happened to you in the last 30 days at work?
Whoa.
Right? That's just a very different question. People aren't asking those kind of questions, right?
Oh, and what I really like about that, Amy, is it's a pattern interrupt. And I've lived my life mostly on the sales side, and a pattern interrupt is an actual selling technique to kind of get your prospect out of the no, just looking or send me some information mode, right? You ask a question a different way. So in this case right here, because you're asking the candidate, a question in a different way, they're not going to be able to give you that canned response that might even mask some of their deficiencies, or might kind of make them look like they're a good fit for a job that they're not. But it's also a great conversation starter. So you can still get to the question that you wanted to ask, but in a very conversational way, which builds a relationship. That's smart. That's a good.
And that's the whole point of it. That's the whole point there, Dan, is it's a conversation. I say, and have said this for decades, it's a conversation, not an interrogation. So if I can have, right? Because do you have this? Can you do this? Do you want to do this? What is this? If I can have a conversation with someone and make it more relaxed, and I kind of ask them, I call them high return questions. Ask those questions that, gosh, if you had a magic wand, what would this look like, kind of a thing.
Did you say high return? Did you call it a high return?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so what I mean by that, Dan, is it's an open-ended question, but it's not leading your candidate down any one path as your answer. So let me give you an example. Like maybe you would ask the question, what's one thing we should take into consideration when we place you on your next position?
Oof.
Right now, where could that go? As a candidate, where could you take that?
You can take it anywhere.
Yeah.
You know what I love about it? There's two things I love about it. The recruiter doesn't know where the candidate's going to take it. So you're breaking out of that pattern of autopilot. So by default, it's doing that. But two, you're going to get an amazing glimpse into the mindset or the thought process of that person. And whatever they come up with is generally what's top of mind, right? So if they're like, oh, one of the things that we should consider about placing me there is, what about transportation? Like I use public transportation, or I only have a bicycle, or childcare, like I have to have a shorter shift on Thursdays, right? Like
Mhm.
they might say something that's very personal to them, or they might say something to the effect of, well, hey, I have a visa, work visa that's expiring in 11 months. So if this is a 12-month contract, that could cause an issue. Like you I gotta believe that most often you're gonna hear something that would be a barrier to success in that role that the recruiter otherwise wouldn't uncover. Is that what, do you see it that way? Because I would think that happened that way.
Absolutely. And I also see it this way too, that it might, what is on their resume or what's on their application might not be what they want to do, right? So it might be, maybe they are, have you heard about the concept career portfolio? Are you familiar with this concept?
Moderately.
So with the career portfolio, basically an employee, and today I see it all the time with my nieces and nephews, they're just trying to get the next new skill to add into their career portfolio, just so they're more marketable when they move to the next position, right?
Yeah.
So you might think, well, if this person was, I don't know, a bookkeeper, and that's what they want to keep doing, well, maybe that's not what they want to do at all. So maybe they're going to say, what I don't want to do is accounting. I know that's all I've ever done. Can you help me figure out how to do this skill instead?
Oof.
So it also allows you not to pigeonhole, if you will, but really listen to what does the candidate want, not what's on the resume. What do they really want?
So that's huge for two reasons. One, I can put myself in both sides because I could see a recruiter sending along an amazing resume for that bookkeeper and then finding out that they don't want to do bookkeeping. So now you kind of got to like figure out how to tap dance a little bit with your client on that one, you know? Or I can also see the recruiter that finds that out in the interview process. If they say, hey, you look like an amazing bookkeeper, we've got a bookkeeper role, and the candidate's like, yeah, but I really want to get more into digital media marketing, right?
Right,
The
right.
natural response for the recruiters is gonna be like, oh my God, this is a waste of my time, right? So how do we solve, like how do you do that? Like if that happened, how do you train a recruiter to not look at it as a waste of time, but maybe a discovery of talent?
And I think that's exactly what you do. That's you have the recruiter continue the conversation, right? So, okay, well, if you don't want to do accounting and you want to get into digital marketing, tell me a little bit about what experience do you have? What schooling have you had? What do you see is going to get you there? Do you feel like you'll need to take an interim position while you get some education in that area? How do you see yourself getting there? So I think we at Staffing eTrainer, we talk about this. It's called the candidate partnership ladder. And it's the different levels of partnership you can have with your candidates. So the bottom is a source. They're going to talk to you because they want to know how much you're paying so they can go back and get a counter offer kind of thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
The top one is trusted advisor. And that's where that individual stays in touch with you, calls you, continues to be in contact with you, even if they've gone off to another position. But if you create that level of conversation with them in an interview, okay, so you want to get to digital marketing, let's talk about that. How do you see that happen? You know, what can we do to help you get there? What are you going to do on your own to get there? If you have those kind of conversations, you might find out that that person has some other skill that they want to utilize that maybe you could use with one of your clients. But I never want to close a door on a candidate unless it's I'm an IT firm and the person doesn't have IT, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to place a
Yeah,
general.
there's reasonable reasons to close the door on it.
Yeah.
So that ladder and getting the trusted advisor is so smart. It makes me draw the parallel to the real estate industry. And then maybe I'm the only one like this, but I've got a realtor, right? And like there's someone I know and trust. And like if I'm looking at houses, I'm gonna call them. Like even if I know there's listing agents and all that, but like I'm gonna call my realtor and be like, hey, I'm interested in this house. Can you show this to me? You know, and maybe not everyone buys houses often enough to do that. But like if you have a level of trust, like you're gonna want to go with that person. So what you're suggesting is by using this relationship focused model, get yourself to trusted advisor status. So like people will stay in touch with you when they're thinking about a career change. Like, hey, my contract's coming up here. Do you have anything for me? Or I'm thinking about making a job change. So if you build that level of relationship, you can almost have I'm gonna use an outdated term here, but like a stable of talent that no one else has access to because they trust you.
Right, exactly. And when their friends are looking for a position, who are they going to refer them to?
Exactly right.
So, and so think about this. This is something that I've been talking about this for 9 months to a year. Think about the staffing industry and how we got our start, right? So the late 1800s, we were finding people, they were unloading ships. During the winter, they couldn't unload the ships in the Great Lakes, so the guy found temporary work for them in warehouses. Summer came back around, he pulled those people back out so he'd have the people to unload the ships. If you look over the 130 years we've been in an industry, we haven't changed a whole lot with how we have looked at our relationship with candidates.
Yeesh.
We still see them as a person that we're going to put on a job in a temporary, right, time frame. But think about how we've changed our relationships with our clients. That's been huge. Like we are so sophisticated with what we offer now to our clients.
Immensely so. Yeah.
I mean, just in the time I've been in the industry, it's amazing.
Yeah.
We haven't changed when it comes to the talent. And so I really want people to realize talent's going to continue to be a challenge. What can they do? What can you do to say, how am I going to keep these people in my net, if you will, right?
Yeah.
How am I going to keep them engaged? And I don't know how this looks. I've been toying with this idea of, it's almost kind of like, if you think of a Deloitte or a McKinsey, right? They have consultants they send out to their clients. Yep. They're their full-time employees. I'm not insinuating that we would bring every temporary employee on full-time. I'm not saying that, but what if that model can we take and incorporate into what we do?
Sure.
Because those people, if you can keep them in your network, if you can keep them engaged, if you can keep them part of your community, you have a talent pool that will continue to grow and be there.
So I agree with that, but I feel like there's certain areas where that could work. And I feel like it's more of the specialty. Like if you were an IT firm and you had developers or, QA testers or whatever on staff, and you could just deploy them on a contract, I think that would work. Obviously in the healthcare space, certainly per diem can work if you're spreading around. But I feel like unless you're in an area, very industrial area with a lot of variable workforce, like warehouses or production facilities or things like that you could actually truly shift workforce around. I don't know how that would work there, but.
And I don't think it would. And I'm not insinuating bringing those people on full time and paying them all the time. I want people to think about what of that model might we be able to incorporate. So think about this, Dan. People stay in jobs because they're engaged because they feel there's a community there and they feel they are bettering themselves. There's all kinds of statistics and studies and all of that around that, right? But why can't we as staffing companies offer, and I'm going to air tag benefits, to our employees to help them create that type of a community? So I call it a talent community.
Right.
So why don't we offer to our temporary associates additional education on things that aren't necessarily career related? Maybe we could offer personal budgeting 101.
Yeah.
Things that would help them be stronger, right? Obviously, what we always provide is resume writing and skills enhancement, and we can do all of those things around the career.
Right.
help them build that career portfolio. But what if we provided a few other opportunities that would allow them to connect and network with other temporary associates? So,
Interesting.
why don't we have a softball team of our temporary associates and sponsor it? It's a way that our temporary associates get camaraderie. It's a way they can have fun together, and they're part of the company. Where if they're on a temporary assignment, they're in another company.
Yeah.
They don't really feel a part of that community. So is there anything we can do to help create that community feeling around our company?
That's a really interesting concept. When you were talking about creating the training opportunities, excuse me, those are obviously a little bit more individualized. It doesn't, hit to unless you're doing like some level of Zoom or in-person classes or whatever, which I feel like logistically and based on demand might be a little tricky. But when you started getting around like team sports or events or things like that, I think that makes a ton of sense. And I was actually just speaking with Hannah McDonald. She's actually one of the other interviews this month, but education came up and she was like, there's so many ways to get good education out there on YouTube or other places online. And my suggestion was, it'd be cool if an agency just sort of curated stuff and put it in an easy to use place for agency or for their talent. Say, go check this out.
That's exactly what I'm speaking about, Dan. What are things that we can offer to them that can help me be a better person? It doesn't have to be an instructor led.
Yeah.
It could be an animated video. It could be something on YouTube. Like she said, there are so many avenues and areas that you can go gather that. But anything that would help me, how to have a difficult conversation with my supervisor, right? Yeah. And remembering that these people are going to be in your community for the long haul, not necessarily just now while you have them on an assignment, which is what we've done for 130 years. But go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that ties it back to what you said in the beginning about changing your mindset to building a network. If you go into the interview and your goal is to make a placement, then you're more likely to fall into autopilot and just go through the motions. And once the placement's made, that's your goal line that you're crossing, or that's the box that you're checking. Exactly, right? But if your goal is to build strong long-term relationship with this employee, then just making this placement today is only the first box that gets checked, but it's nowhere near the goal line. So I think almost just shifting that mindset that, like you just mentioned, I think will actually bring it full circle to that opening sentiment about focusing on building relationships, not just filling the job in front of you.
Absolutely.
So
I truly feel that there are so many areas of support and education that we can provide to our temporary associates and make them feel like they are somewhat of a full-time employee, right? We're giving them access to whatever this shared drive is or whatever, where we're curating all of this. And they feel like they're part of the full-time team, which that to me is what's going to keep them coming back to your company and finding out that referring people to you, right? That's what's going to create that connection and that bond.
This sounds really, really crazy, but I think a very easy way for an agency just to test this concept out is if they actually created or hired, somebody that could actually be the speaker or trainer to actually just create short 1 to 3 minute training videos for basic skills on TikTok format, and just said, and they basically did that. Like, hey, we're just going to put this out. This is how you deal with the interview question. Where do you want to be in 5 years? Or this is how you deal with the interview question. What are your weaknesses? This is how you manage a budget. This is how you you just start basically doing all these things. I think that more people would get interested in that, and they're getting exposure to that agency. But TikTok has that ability where it literally can go crazy viral. And the point that I'm thinking about is I had a call earlier today with a company that manages a TikTok account for somebody. And all this person does is offers Excel tips. That's their entire TikTok channel, is just offering these Excel tips. And her channel has blown up and they've gone viral because all these companies are like, oh my gosh, yeah, our people need this. And now they're basically contracting her to go train them and all of their staff on how to optimize their Microsoft Excel skills, right? And it's all just training content. So like, I feel like an agency that's a low entry point to get into it. Just create small little videos, sharing best practices, and just getting a following. And if you get traction, if you get positive signals, then maybe more formalize it in some sort of learning management system or whatnot. But I think that's an easy way to do it, and it would double his branding as well.
Very. And like you said, you don't have to do the creation of the content. There's so much out there that you can find that would be so easy. But I just think there's a lot of different areas that the temporary associates would love to get more information on. And if we offered that to them, mental health, things around mental health and stress and all of that, little 2-minute video, I think it would be very powerful.
Amen.
And what you're doing is you're creating that connection to you, and you're creating that community, a place where I can go and other people can go to better ourselves.
I love it. So because your expertise, I'd be remiss if I didn't delve into this area. So you're one of the industry's leading trainer, and people come to you for a very specific reason to skill their people up, new and tenured. But I want to focus on tenured people for a second. And I might have a following question about new people, depending on where this goes. But say tenured people, sometimes people get set in their ways, right? You've met those people that you can see the difference between 10 years of experience or 1 year of experience repeated 9 times, right? Like, the difference there. So how do you advise your staffing agencies, or how are you successful teaching new skills or getting recruiters to be open-minded to learning new skills and leveling up? Like, what's your trick there?
Hey, sometimes it's just not going to happen. Let's just be honest. There's some people that are just right. But in reality, you have to make that individual, not make them, you have to explain to that individual why it's important that they make a change. So if you can prove, hey, I had somebody who was a 10-year veteran and they went through this training and this was the outcome that they had. Bringing that to the table and saying, give this a try. We're going to try it for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is. We're going to see what the outcome is. Let that person actually give it a try. But you have to, I call it the WIFM, right? What's in it for me?
Yeah.
So what's the WIFM for that individual to learn this new skill? And you have to figure out what makes that person tick and kind of lean into that important element that is what's going to make them tick and be motivated.
I like it.
It's funny because I have a client that's dealing with a little struggle right now, and I won't say a struggle, but somebody who's been there a while, a little set in their ways.
Yeah.
And really just had to have some sit-down meetings and say, you've got to open your mind, you've got to try some of these things. She finally gave in and tried and has been embracing them. But sometimes it just takes that one-on-one conversation too. Hey, help me understand why you're not on board here. Because sometimes it's more than they don't want to do it. There could be something more there, right?
There usually is, right? Like human psychology is not so complicated to understand the reason that people take action or they don't, right? There's usually some barrier, and a lot of times it's not readily shared. Like, you do have to be patient and have one-on-one conversations to uncover that. So, all right. So now I do want to come back to the news side, because you said something there about showing progress, saying like, hey, this person went through this 10 weeks, they did this, and this is the result they got out of it. So you've done this for a while and you've worked with companies. What kind of impact do you see with training new people? Your claim, one of your claims to fame is shortening the training ramp, basically getting producers up to speed quicker through your methodologies. So what does quicker mean? Like, if I'm just, let me actually set the stage. Let's say there's agency A and their training methodology is the shadow method, right? They hire a new person, maybe they've got skills or experience or not, and they just let them shadow other recruiters in the office for 4 weeks. And then after 4 weeks of shadowing, then they can go into production. Okay. Versus agency B maybe builds their training model around yours, which you'll define in a second. And like, tell us what that model is and what you're seeing for shortening the ramp. Like, what kind of impact does it really have to have a structured training program?
That's a really big question.
I know. Sorry, I talked a lot.
No, it's good. I love it. I love it. That's just a big question. So 30,000 foot view, the impact it's going to have. Clients that have implemented strong training and onboarding programs maybe have cut their ramp up time in half.
Wow.
It's had an impact. It absolutely has had an impact. But the deal is you have to be patient enough in the first couple weeks in order to make sure that happens. And staffing companies are notorious for hiring after the point of need. And so, right, they're already behind the 8 ball, and they're going to pull that person out because they've got to get them filling. But if you really stick to a plan and you start from day one, actually starts prior to that, but day one, and you go through all of the training for the first 30, 60 days, follow up in 90, you absolutely will see an improvement in the results, actual numbers of fills, but you'll also see a stronger retention of the people that you place. Because now these individuals have been coached and trained on how to create a relationship, not watching Bob's worst habits and then copying those habits because I shadowed Bob and you think Bob does a good job, but I'm just replicating everything Bob does, which may not be good.
Yeah.
So, and in that instance, I learned by frustration. So I had I know an individual, they got hired on as a recruiter at a company. So of course I was like, oh, what can I give you? Take our e-learning courses. I want to help you be, successful. And of course I'm following up with her. What kind of training? What are they doing? How are you coming along? Yeah. Oh, poor thing. She just kind of was left to flounder and to try to figure it out. And she wasn't getting submittals. And I said, well, talk to me. Like, what kind of questions are you asking? She just wasn't asking the good questions. So, gosh, just give your new hires a set of good questions to ask in an interview, and you're already going to be a couple steps ahead, right?
Yeah. It also raises, so I'm a sports guy and I pay attention to like football, and they talk about ceilings and floors, and I did that backwards. Ceilings and floors. And, but I feel like a strong foundation of training, I know I'm preaching in the choir, but a strong foundation of training raises the floor, right? Mm-hmm. Like one of the quotes I often say is, you never rise to the occasion, you always fall to your highest level of preparation, right? So if an agency hires a recruiter or they hire a trainer to train the recruiters, ultimately what they want is production, right? Like at the end of the day, that's what the agency wants, is production. So I feel like it's an inherent process. Like, let's give them a strong foundation, because when you have bad days, which you will, and you kind of fall off, at least you're falling to a lower floor with your foundation of knowledge, and you're kind of going to fall into good habits versus just falling off into bad habits, like Bob's bad habits there, right? So like, I feel like that makes a ton of sense, and people feel supported. This is one thing that, and again, I do some training, as you know, but like, it's like people don't realize, a lot of agencies don't realize that one of the driving motivators for human beings is progression and development. And if we are part of an organization that is like helping us become a better version of ourselves, we're more likely to give more of ourselves to that organization and stay with them. So I feel like that first impression of a I don't want to say structured, but a solid training program is a better foundation for future production as well.
No doubt about it. No doubt. And do you go in? Does somebody give you a training binder? Say, here you go. Just go ahead and read through this the first couple of days. You'll be able to learn everything. Sit with this person. Wow. So what is that telling me as an employee? Okay, you really do not care about me. You really don't care about my success. I am filling a chair.
I'm gonna
So
I'm
yeah.
gonna apply to the first job order I get.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'll do that
Sounds great. That's perfect.
one.
Oh, it's so true. And we've seen it. Like you literally get that new hire and you're like, here's the training manual and here's all your employment paperwork. Here's the conference room. I'll check on you and see if you're still around in 6 hours. It's like, oh my God, what are you like? This is like, it's the most, it's so funny. So like, I come from the sales side. So like, I talk about competitive advantage all the time. I'm always getting that question from clients. Why are you different? Why should I choose you? And here's the secret of our industry. The only competitive advantage that one agency has over another agency is its people.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
Every agency can choose to go with one ATS or another. Every agency can use one job order, or like their the access to all the tools and resources is equal, right? So they're all just different tools. So if you want to be better and you want to command better rates and you want to perform better for your clients, it's all about your people. So hire them right, onboard them right, train
Yeah.
them right, keep investing in those people, and they will be the best return on investment that you ever make. And it's like, why? How are we in the recruiting industry? And most of our industry gets that part wrong. I don't understand it.
Kind of funny, isn't it? A little ironic.
It is ironic. It really is. I feel like Alanis Morissette is over here just singing to our industry. Oh, yeah. As you can tell, I get fired up about that because it's like, train your people. And it's like, oh, we're recruiters. We can just hire good recruiters. Like we know we get good systems and processes. I'm like, you wouldn't hire a contractor that wasn't trained with a hammer. Like it'd be
Right.
ludicrous.
Right.
Right?
Right. Well, in the training too, you know, if you just use our e-learning courses and just say, here, take these e-learning courses and learn how to become a recruiter. And if you don't follow up with them on the implementation plan that we want them to fill out, they're still not going to get it. You have to hear it and implement it and practice it. I mean, there's adult learning theory that goes into it's not just listening to an e-learning course.
You can't. No, it's
No.
comprehension is the beginning. Application and understanding how it works leads to mastery, right?
Wow.
And you have to
Wow.
have an environment that embraces the knowledge, lets you use and apply the knowledge, and embraces the failure that's going to come with not getting it right the first time and learning those lessons. And that's where people progress from. So yeah, I agree. You can't just say, hey, go watch this video, go take this course. Like it doesn't work that way. Training is, I mean, again, preaching to the choir, but for those
Yeah.
listening to this, training is not just reading a book. It's not just attending a conference. Like there's a whole process that goes along with professional development and growing and basically leveling up your floor and increasing your overall capacity for production. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And so we could get into all kinds of adult learning theories and Kolb's theory and all of that, but that definitely you can't just read it, you can't just watch it. There's a whole cycle of learning that needs to take place.
it's true.
For
And then
sure.
there's
Yeah.
reinforcement, right? Like it takes those key three elements. You need a willing student, right? And you acknowledge sometimes you're not going to get that, but you need a willing student that says, hey, I want to learn and get better. You need, an effective teacher that can deliver the content to that willing student. But those are the two least important part. The most important part is a culture and environment that is conducive for both. And if without that, if you're an organization that doesn't have a core value of knowledge adoption and progressive development, then it doesn't matter how much training that you do. Like it just you won't ever really level up effectively. So
Exactly. You said it well.
I try. I'm only as good as the people I'm around. So this has been I could again I think with someone like you I could talk for hours, but I won't take that much of your time. So you mentioned a couple things that I want to see if we can possibly get in front of the audience. So I know that you've got stuff that people can go to Staffing eTrainer and check out and learn about it. But do you have like any sort of best practices or content or something that someone can go download and learn more about your practices and see what is a better way to do training?
We are in the process of updating our website, actually.
There we go.
So Q1, there will be quite a bit out there. So, but Staffing eTrainer, you can go over there. We do have some white papers over there that has some good information around training. And we do have some blogs on our website as well that could give you some information around that. Operations and sales, kind of both.
I love it.
For sure.
And I know that you present a lot of places. I know that you've been in, the Ohio Staffing and Search Association. You've been out in Mass, ASA, NAPS. You're all over the place with training. Do you have any, and I feel like we're kind of just coming through conference season, but do you have any upcoming conferences that you're going to be teaching and training at that people might be able to go to and see you in person?
The conferences for this year are done.
Yeah.
We're doing public sessions, Staffing eTrainer. We have our Sales Elevate program coming up in a couple of weeks. But next year, I'm doing some things for the Massachusetts Staffing Association. That's already on their calendar.
Okay.
It's kind of a jumpstart in staffing. So if anyone is an MSA member, they can jump on that. Actually, awesome. I don't think you need to have to be a member to jump on that.
That's awesome. So we'll get a link to that. And if you got, this episode is coming right out now. So if you have Elevate coming up in a couple of weeks, we'll get that link on page right here so people can go check that out and maybe get into that, which here's my disclaimer, or not disclaimer, here's my PSA. I've been saying this for a couple months now, and Tom Erb last month agreed with me. Mark from WinSource agreed with me. Danny Cahill all agreed with me. I shouldn't say I agreed with all of them. They're much smarter than me. We're shifting. We've been in that recruiter-centric market for 2 years. And now with things constricting a little bit, it's the sales game. And the agencies that focus on elevating their sales right now are going to be the ones that win in 9 to 18 months. So I would encourage anyone watching this to actually go check out that training program with you, Amy, because that's anyone that gets in front of it right now will be the ones that win in the near future.
No doubt about it. That's one reason that we're doing this session. It wasn't on the books, and we put it on the books for just that reason.
Yeah, all the smartest minds in staffing seem to see it the same exact way, is that right now we got to move into that sales front. And unfortunately, because we haven't been, and not everybody, but most of the industry has not been actively selling and actively prospecting and actively building relationships, because we're all just sort of burnt out on filling orders, and the sales has been kind of easy. We sort of lost those techniques a little bit. We've been a little bit rusty, but also something that's happened is consumer buying habits have shifted quite a bit. So sometimes if you try to knock the rust off of your old techniques, they're not going to be as effective at selling for the next year and a half. So I would highly encourage anybody to really, get brushed up on techniques and think about, how do I apply techniques today to sell to the new consumer, because we've all changed our buying habits through the pandemic. So
yeah, definitely have. Definitely.
Awesome. Amy, I am so glad to have you here, part of Staffing Monthly, and I'm grateful for you to share your wisdom and knowledge. And if someone wants to get a hold of you, I know we mentioned the website, but what is the best way for them to get in touch with you if they want to learn more about your training or your methodologies?
The easiest way is probably LinkedIn, and just connect with me on LinkedIn or send me a message. Notice I have a funny spelling last name. It's Munroe, Munroe. Or you can certainly call me at 770-740-0965.
Awesome. And we'll get your LinkedIn profile linked right on page. We'll get the phone number on there, website.
And email and all that. Yeah.
Yep. We'll have it all right on there for you. So again, thank you so much for being here and being part of our November Staffing Monthly issue. I'm grateful for it. And we will get you a copy of this as soon as it wraps.
And thank you, Dan. This has been a pleasure and an honor. I appreciate it.